Joe Biden's week from hell will not end. Following the train wreck of a debate last week, all eyes are on Joe Biden's next steps. Will he stay and fight to the bitter end, or will his family persuade him to bow out before he destroys his legacy even further? Sky News All-Stars James Morrow, Peter Stefanovic and Rita Panahi take a look at the fallout from the presidential debate and ask what's next for the embattled Joe Biden. After the train wreck debate comes the train wreck fallout, and Jill Biden, wife of President Joe Biden, is the rotten core at the centre of it all. Immediately after the gaffe-filled debate, Jill Biden assisted her husband off the stage, very slowly helping him down the stairs and back out into the green room.
Joe Biden's age, of course, was already a talking point before the debate. It was amplified as well, not just in a cognitive sense. Plenty of discussion online about this footage of the First Lady, Jill Biden, helping her 81-year-old husband off stage. You can see pretty small steps there, but having to be helped off. He clearly needed assistance to descend those steps to greet the two CNN moderators after that. So I'm sure that'll be images played as well.
And once behind stage, Jill was roasted for speaking to her frail husband like a toddler whilst he looked on confused.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the... And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lied! Yes.
And over the weekend, Jill Biden was once again forced to come to Joe Biden's aid, escorting him slowly down the stairs of Air Force One. These incidences caused a flurry of concern in the media, with Sky News All-Star Danico DiGiorgio saying Jill Biden's encouragement of Joe is elder abuse.
I find it very disturbing that Jill Biden is still trying to push him on, that he can go until November, that he can go for another term. What planet is she living on? It's actually cruel. It is elder abuse to let this old man keep going.
I've got to say, I did not feel... I felt sad watching the debate, but I didn't feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, his entire life's goal is to get to where he now is, and he continues to do it, though he is semi-embalmed. I felt sorry for America and the free world.
Jill Biden seems to be sticking by her husband for the moment, but the media isn't so confident about his abilities to remain on as leader. Even rusted-on Democrats, CNN, are asking the Bidens for an explanation.
Worried about the president. We should pray for the president. I think his advisors, I think the White House, and I think his family have a lot of explaining to do to their party and to the American people.
And MSNBC's Joy Reid was forced to admit that many are asking questions following Joe Biden's performance.
I, too, was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak.
Additionally, in an unprecedented move that sent shockwaves across the globe, the New York Times also called on Joe Biden to step down. This is a synchronized 180-degree turn from the media, which until now has gaslighted their viewers into thinking Joe Biden is completely okay, explains Sky News All-Star Rita Panahi.
But first, on Friday, Paul Murray and I got together to watch the great presidential debate, and you can see the 22-minute highlights on all our digital platforms now. It's already been watched more than 1.5 million times on YouTube alone, and here's why. Because unlike the rest of the Australian media and the bulk of the US media, we have been telling you for 4 years about Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline. This is a man who has been in public life for more than 5 decades. The decline in recent years is undeniable. It's not due to a stutter. It's not a right-wing conspiracy. It's real and obvious to anyone with eyes and ears. But the overwhelming majority of the media has asked you to not believe your lying eyes and ears and trust the narrative that Joe is fine. Here's the Washington Post and the New York Times and ABC all claiming out of context and misleading videos are being used to unfairly malign Joe Biden as mentally and physically deficient. ABC News told you seeing is not believing. No, don't believe what you see. These are just out of context videos. And they're being used to fuel a narrative that President Joe Biden is mentally and physically unfit for office. End quote. That's what they were claiming. And the Democrats in unison were on message, pushing the narrative that Joe is fit, as sharp as a tack, never been better.
Sky News All-Star James Morrow agrees, saying Joe Biden will be replaced with almost near certainty now that the left-wing media have begun their assault on the president.
What do you think the likelihood is now that the Democratic candidate we see running against Trump in November is not Joe Biden?
Look, I have been saying that on this program for well over a year now. So for me, it's approaching almost a near certainty. I would say we're certainly at least 2/3 of the way to that possibility. And the thing I would say, Caleb, is the way, if you go and look at the way CNN, the New York Times, everybody who talks to senior Democrats and big-time, big-money donors is talking right now, it feels like there is almost a coordinated full-court press on. Normally you would say after a Democrat debate that didn't go Biden's way, they would still say, oh yeah, look, let's fact-check Trump and he's the real bad guy here. No, all of the commentary out of the left is this is an unmitigated disaster, and we have to do something to stop the bleeding. My money, they're not going to go with a Gavin Newsom. I'm reckoning either a Gretchen Whitmer or an Amy Klobuchar, somebody like that. Leaves still, of course, the Kamala Harris problem, but I guess that's an issue for tomorrow, not today.
But despite what seems to be universal calls for Joe Biden to step down, the president was defiant over the weekend when he bounded with energy at fundraising events, managing to raise over $30 million for the campaign, explains Sky News All-Star Peter Stefanovic.
US President Joe Biden's campaign has raised $33 million American dollars despite his disastrous debate performance on Friday. His supporters have rallied behind the president as debate rages over whether there is still enough time to replace Joe Biden if he decides to step down. Our Washington correspondent Annalise Nielsen with this report.
US President Joe Biden is spending his Sunday at the secluded presidential hideaway of Camp David. The White House insists this was a pre-planned family vacation.
Sky News All-Star Annalise Nielsen revealed Joe Biden believes voter sentiment is still on his side.
In a transcript released after a Democrat fundraiser, Joe Biden was quoted as saying that the voters had a different reaction than the pundits. However, the pundits we spoke to in Atlanta the day after the debate seemed to have the same reaction as everybody else.
I'm a registered nurse. I work in dementia and Alzheimer's, and I've pretty much been following President Biden for the last couple of years, and it was pretty obvious to me for quite some time now. So that's been hard to see. I mean, I don't really agree with that he's in that position, been put in that position. And I think it's wrong. So I hope someone will step in eventually and say, time to stop, and give him the respect that he deserves.
And back to Jill Biden, well, she remains fully behind Joe, with the family huddled at Camp David on vacation over the weekend, encouraging Joe Biden to remain on. So what does all of this mean for Donald Trump? University of Sydney political scientist Professor Simon Jackman says Joe Biden pulling out of the race will be fantastic for the Trump campaign.
that would be great from a Republican perspective. Would show how panicked they are. And by the way, that would be a bloodbath inside the Democratic Party, right? And so if you're Donald Trump, this idea that this is the conversation. Fantastic. The idea there could be a brokered convention, which is meaning a free-for-all, that there's this mad scramble to, is it Kamala Harris, do they go to Gavin Newsom, do they bring in the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, like all of that, if that's the conversation Democrats are having, that is a great day for Donald Trump. He shouldn't be afraid of that. That is a great day, until depends on who they finally settle on, I suppose.